Chris Craddock, man, I'm glad that you didn't crash a golf cart at Raspberry Falls down there in Northern Virginia. I didn't see you hanging down there, and then we're able to get connected here and do this interview. Always happy to get on with anyone from Wholesaling Inc. So, Chris, thank you, man. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, man. Looking forward to this.
A pleasure and a privilege. Why don't you start off? And I'm curious to know as well, since we're new friends here, just meeting, but would love to hear who is Chris Craddock, both on the personal family structure and then what your business and businesses look like today.
Yeah, I let's see. I've got six kids. I live in the Northern Virginia area, building a house. My wife's always wanted to do horses, so building a house in a little equestrian area. So we're becoming horse people way too fast. And anybody who knows anything about being a horse person, it's like kind of like being a boat person, which they always joke boats break out another 1,000. Yeah, that's what I'm finding out the horse community is like as well, just stroking checks. But it's fun. I'm really excited about it. Plus, I've always loved Westerns, so now it's cool because I can kind of lean into that a little bit more. But yeah, like I said, I got six kids, and yeah, I started off, graduated in 2000 from college, and went on staff with an organization called Young Life. I loved Young Life. It was awesome. But I made almost no money while I was on Young Life staff. And when my wife got pregnant, I had to figure out a way to make money. And so ended up going to the library, checking out books on real estate investing. And, within 4 months, I made 12 times what I made in a year. So that was awesome, but it allowed me to continue to do ministry stuff before the money ran out again. And during that time, I'd gone back to school. I got a doctorate in leadership. And so I always led large groups of people. And I love it, right? You help other people accomplish their goals. I mean, there's nothing better than that. And that's what I found in this world is you help other people, you make a lot of money, they make a lot of money. It's really good. And I ended up reading Gary Keller's book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and started building a retail team. And, kind of started hitting a glass ceiling there and realized that one of the big things that I could do is really help investors that were buying tons and tons of leads, but maybe not making a ton of money from those leads because they're closing their deals. But like, what about all the leads that don't fit their buy box, right? And so how can I help them monetize those leads? So I figured out a system to monetize those dead leads. And it made my retail team grow like crazy. It helped the investors I was kind of in business with grow like crazy. And it's just the biggest win-win ever. And so since then, we created this program, REI Revive. As you mentioned, it's part of the Wholesaling Inc. platform. But the whole idea is, how do you make sure that every time your phone rings, you can get paid, right? Because right now, most investors, if somebody doesn't want to sell at 65 to 75 cents on the dollar, it just sits in your CRM and dies. Somebody else makes money on it, but not you. And so how do you grow that? I mean, heck, I've seen brand new investors bringing in like $5,000 a month. I've seen massive investors that bring in as much as 60,000 a month. And so you just see that regardless of where you are, whether you're new or whether you've been in it for a while, if you have anybody that is responding to any of your marketing, any leads coming to your CRM, you need to make sure that every time that phone rings, you can get paid. And that's what we built out.
I love that, man. Well, let's dive into that. I see that you're doing 35 to 60 transactions a month. So again, we have a very high volume guy on here. He's with Wholesaling Inc. So absolutely amazing group of people over there, have helped tons and tons of investors that I've seen just from my perspective over the years, probably over 5 years at this point, that I've been around with Investor Fuse. But let's break that down a little bit. We can just dive right into it. How do investors get more money from their dead leads? And kind of what you were explaining, where people don't want to sell at 60 cents on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar. This is one of the craziest markets that we're in right now ever nationally. So I would say it's even emphasized how many people want to sell retail, or they think their house is worth more because they're hearing from their real estate brother or cousin or friend of a friend that they can get all this money for their house and everything is selling over listing. So I think this is an extremely applicable time just with how the market is and how the world is, where you can monetize more of these leads. So how would you get money from dead leads?
Yeah. So here's the main thing. almost every investor that I talk to has had the idea, oh, I'll kick this over to a real estate agent and they'll go and close it. But almost every investor that I've ever talked to has tried it and failed miserably at it, or says, oh yeah, actually one of my favorite students, he was introduced to me by a friend of mine, Tom Kroll. And, essentially he was like, Chris, I've got this thing handled. I've got it figured out. My wife's a real estate agent. So we've got this thing figured out. And I asked him, well, how many of these deals did you do last year? And I mean, it was less than 10. It was just a handful. And I was like, bro, let me just tell you, you should be doing that many a month, not that many a year. And actually, the great thing is I just talked to him last week, and he told me that right now they've got 10 pending, 10 under contract right now. So yeah, they're pacing at this point. If they just keep doing what they've been doing, I mean, that's over 100 a year. So all of a sudden you go from making a little bit of money to making a lot. So the real key here is you've got to find a great real estate agent, not just somebody who's good at selling real estate, but somebody that understands the distressed market, because somebody that raises their hand and says, I'm willing to sell to an investor is a different person that raises their hand and says, hey, I want a real estate agent to come over here. And so if you don't understand, one, how to pick the right agent that knows how to sell, and two, knows how to handle this objection, then it's just not going to work. So the thing that I say that everybody needs to look for is somebody that's happy, hungry, humble, and smart. And I'll tell you, if you're listening, if you're taking notes, I take notes on podcasts. I would just say, if you write those down, that is a universal for anybody you hire. If you're growing out your business, or you want to grow out your business at some point, I'm going to tell you why those 4 things are so important. Happy. If you hire somebody that's always pissed off, or somebody that comes in and says, like I said, I used to be in ministry. And so I had this pastor that mentored me, and he said this. He said, Chris, if somebody comes into the church and says, hey, I love your church, it's such a breath of fresh air. The church I used to go to really sucked. The pastor was rough. He's like, tell them about a church down the street, because it's just a matter of time before you really suck. And he's like, wherever they go, there they are. Happy people tend to be happy. Unhappy people will find a reason to be unhappy. And it's just a matter of time. So look for people that are happy. And remember, it's all about patterns, not potential. Don't say, well, at my company, it'll be different, because it won't, right? Like patterns, not potential. So happy, hungry. Here's the other thing, man. I've seen so many people talk about these agents that did almost no deals during COVID. They just took the year off, all the other stuff. Well, I'll tell you, if they're hungry, they're going to be hungry, right? Like my butt is always burning. I don't know how to say that, but like I am always wanting to do the next thing. And so the thing that I see is like, if somebody says no, do they just say, okay, well, I'll try somebody else? No. If the door's closed, will they climb through a window that's open, right? Like they are hungry. They're going to find a way to make it work. So happy, hungry, humble. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of times people mistake arrogance and confidence. Confidence and arrogance are not the same thing. You can be massively confident and massively humble at the same time. Here's what humility is. Humility is, are you willing to find people that they are better than you in certain areas? Are you willing to sit at their feet and say, how can I learn from you? Teach me, let me understand. And so that's a big piece, because a lot of times, people think that somebody that is confident is not humble, but that's not true. And here's the other thing. I've got a number of people in my life that are so like, I guess, what's the word? Meek, I guess I'd say, where they'll say, Chris, you're right. I need to change. I need to get this right. You're right. And then they never change. That person, that's pride, right? So just understand, it's not about how confident you are or bravado or anything like that. That is not pride. Pride is willingness to learn from others, willingness to take the back seat, willingness to say, let me sit at your feet and learn from you, because you know more than I do in this area. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of real estate agents that are top agents in their area will never be a good fit for this, because they're not willing to use different dialogues, different scriptings. I just talked to an top agent that I was connecting with one of my students, and he was just like, no, we've got our listing presentation down. And I was like, bro, these people are talking to an investor. Your listing presentation will not work on them. He's like, no, you don't understand our listing presentation. I'm like, no, you don't understand. You're not going to make any money. And my student isn't going to make money either. So either you got to follow the instruction or don't do it. Like I can't make the introduction. And that's one of the other pieces there with humility is, I'll tell you, I can find plenty of real estate agents out there. I could probably, anybody can figure out any program you want. But the reality is, what I think is so amazing is the amount of time, if you're able to compress all of this stuff so that you have a color by numbers system, then you should do it, which is why I pay for a lot of coaching. I mean, I spend over 6 figures every year on coaching and consulting because I want people to teach me how to do stuff faster. You know, the stuff that I promise you, all the stuff my coaches impart to me, I could figure out given enough time. But the reality is, because of the amount of money that I can make in this business, I don't want to take 2 years to figure out something that somebody could teach me how to do in a month or teach me how to do in a week. Right. That's why that's also humility there. And then the last one is smart. So smart is also understanding that, right? Understanding that if I pay somebody, let's say I pay somebody $1,000 to coach me for a month, right? Or $5,000 or $10,000 to coach me for a month, but it teaches me stuff that is going to help me make $50,000, $100,000, $200,000. Then I got to realize, okay, this is worth like having somebody compress all of that learning into that small amount of period of time. The same thing's true when we go on appointments. And this is for you as an investor or as an agent, is if you go on an appointment and you miss out on the appointment, they say no to you, but they sign with somebody else. Then the reality is that's not them being, just foolish or stupid. It means that you didn't communicate well. Same thing is true for the agents that don't sign up listings, right? It means that they didn't learn fast enough. And Keith Cunningham in his book, The Road Less Stupid, talks about, not making the same stupid mistakes over and over and over again. Are you looking for it?
I just bought that book. This is like the books that I read like between meetings, but I just got that book last week and I'm loving it so far, and the structure and purpose there.
So good. It's so good. But that's that whole idea is don't pay the stupid tax, right? Don't learn things that you can learn from other people. Don't learn things a second time in a row. And this is what I say to the people that I coach. I'm like, if you had Groundhog Day and could do the same appointment over and over and over again until you got it right, would you walk out with a signed agreement? And so being smart is to not make the same stupid mistakes. If you're walking out without signed agreements regularly, I'll tell you, you're making the same stupid mistakes and you don't even realize you're making this mistakes. It's either in the pre-qualification phase or while you're sitting there at the table, you're not being an effective communicator. So anyway, I think I just spoke way too long to answer that question. So sorry about that.
Not at all. That's hot now. No need to apologize. That's exactly how I like it, because most people, if they're taking notes, they can go right through that. And it's a long answer, but that's the best way to get everything out of your head, which is kind of an art for people to absorb and digest. The 4 things you're looking for. So I guess we'll take a step back a little bit. So Chris doesn't really recommend getting an agent hat or being licensed yourself and taking the retail leads before you start rolling here, which we can expand on. And I guess to start off with step 1 here, you're saying it's almost like an interview or a qualification process of finding an agent to work with or agents to work with. And the 4 things that you're looking for, or 5, including humility, would be happy, humble/humility, hungry, and smart. That's step 1.
Yeah, exactly.
That's step 1. And Road Less Stupid, that is a great book with one of the thought concepts. If you guys are watching on YouTube, I was just looking to see if I had it up here, but I have it in my room downstairs. One of those main thought concepts of that book is that successful people aren't necessarily doing like the smartest things all the time. They're just, the smart thing for them is eliminating doing the dumb things, like shooting themselves in the foot mistakes. If I had to kind of give a one-sentence summary on one of the thought concepts there, which Chris is relating to just this. And I love the accountability that you're putting, which it really is true. If you're not getting the listing agreement or the deal and someone else is, that's not on the seller or the client. That's on you for not closing them, where you could have a checklist or certain skills or certain agents in place that are effective that have these 4 qualities.
Yeah. And there's another book called Extreme Ownership that I think everybody should read. And it's very similar to that is, like, are you owning that? Because until you own it, you're going to make the same mistakes over and over and over again, and you're never going to get better. So like that was one of my favorite books, was Extreme Ownership, because it made me realize when I read that book, I had some people on my team that weren't closing at a high enough level. And I was blaming them, right? This is a leadership question. I was blaming them because they were not doing certain things they were supposed to be doing. But the reality was, I'm the leader of the organization. And so like I was pointing fingers and saying, why aren't you following up? Why aren't you making the calls you're supposed to be making? All these things. But the reality was, I wasn't holding them accountable to it. And I remember Gary Keller once said, I'll never fire anybody, but my standards will. I didn't hold them to those standards that said, hey, to be in our organization, here are the standards. And if you're below the line, then you can't be in the organization. Then it's not. And I wasn't doing that. And so I had to level up, and I had to point the finger at myself and say, you know what? I'm allowing things in our organization that I should never allow. And it's affecting everybody else. And so when we took care of that, our whole organization got healthier and better because everybody was looking around and seeing more healthy habits. But again, it's that was just so easy to blame other people, but it's a lot more painful to blame yourself, right? Like to say, oh my gosh, I let this culture happen. I let this happen in my organization. But then once you blame yourself and once you see that it's on me, then you can make it better. It's like, alcoholics, right? The first step of AA is admit you're an alcoholic, right? It's that same thing. Until you come to grips with the fact that it starts with you and the buck stops with you, then you can never make it better.
100%. It's funny and interesting how reading something and just having a different perspective can change your whole behavior and personality, isn't it? And everybody has those throughout their own journey, whether it's, and you choose your influence no matter what, whether it's your friend group or the people that you hang out with or the books you choose to read and podcasts and stuff like that. Everybody has their own journey in life and everybody absorbs different material, and the stuff that resonates with you really changes your behaviors and perspective and actions that you end up taking.
Right. 100%. And one thing you said earlier, so I think that every organization, somebody in the organization should be licensed, but and if you look at every big organization across the country, there is somebody licensed in that organization, like across the board. And if success leaves clues, that's really important to understand. And we could get into that if you want to further, like, because I think there's a lot of reasons to be licensed. But one of the things that I want to throw out there is it is not you that's going to go in and let's say the average home is worth $250. You can't go in and offer $150 for the house. And when they say no, turn around and say, hey, but by the way, I could list it for $250. You've lost all rapport there. It does not work like that. And all the people that have tried that, I'm telling you, like you've lost your rapport. They're not going to trust you. Even if they smile and nod, it's most of the time a smoke screen, because they're not going to say, hey, you just tried to buy my house for $150. Now you're telling me you could get $250 for it. It doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the clarification there. I guess what I said was more so like taking that in a vacuum, not the totality of the situation, where it's like in a vacuum, you shouldn't be making the offer, the cash offer, the discount offer, and then just turning around and putting your agent hat on listing it. But obviously not in a vacuum. It would definitely be beneficial for someone on your team to have a license or, a close friend that's an agent. But let's go back and we can kind of chronologically, just break down kind of like an intro to REI Revive. And then we can talk leadership, because I definitely want to extract some nuggets from you. Some of them are already just coming out naturally, just us talking real estate and your journey and getting more from your dead leads and stuff like that. So we have a filter of agents that we're looking to work with, right? Through the four qualities: happy, humble / having humility, hungry, and smart. What do we do from there?
Yeah. So can you repeat the question? The question is, what do we, like, after you get somebody with the 4 qualities?
Yeah. And I guess it would be in your own terms, because that's just what we started with, the 4 qualities that we found an agent to work with. How do we continue along the path of turning these dead or these retail leads into money for you, into monetization?
So what you're going to have to do is figure out how to qualify leads, right? Because you don't want to cannibalize your own leads. That's one of the big things. That's one of the biggest fears that all of the investors have is like, well, if I kick these leads over, what happens if one of those leads turns into a $20,000, a $50,000, a $100,000 deal? So how do you handle that? And how do you handle it with the agent, right? One of the things I'll just say right now, I'll just tell you in that is you want the agent to, you definitely want that agent to be incentivized the same way you're incentivized. So you can say to them, hey, if you kick back a lead that turns out they want a cash offer, I'll give you exactly the amount you would have made on the listing, plus I'll give you a $500 kicker, right? And even if you're saying, well, no, this is my friend, of course they'll kick it back. You want them to be incentivized the same way you're incentivized. So they make more money, you make more money, everything's good. There's a lot of other ways that you can make sure that you filter all the leads correctly. So that's one of the big things. You can also need to go back through all your old dead leads and reach out in a way. I've got a mass text that I recommend, but you reach out to everybody to find out, if they're kind of thinking about it, right? Like there's something called a rocker box, which was the old school box that you used for mining for gold. It was like you bring all of the dirt and everything into this rocker box and you sift it and shake it, and all the junk falls out and the gold stays there. So you kind of get your rocker box going where you can get the gold to rise to the top. And then on those, you might find a couple leads that'll turn into deals, and then you kick the other ones over to the agent. Now, the agent, in our program, we invite the agent into the group coaching. We invite the agent to be a part of everything because that is just as important to what you do as the investor. So the investor actually is the easiest part because it takes literally, once you find the right agent, it just takes a few hours to instill the right systems to start kicking it to the agents. And then from there on out, it's just set it and forget it. You don't have to do anything extra. But then the agent's the one that's going to have to level up and make sure they're going to grow and get better. And so we do a lot of training with the agent. How do you speak to the reasons why people are calling an investor? I mean, that's one of the big ones. Everybody calls an investor for 5 reasons. 1, they don't want to pay a commission. 2, they think the house is too jacked up to go in the MLS. 3, they've got to sell fast. 4, they don't want their neighbors to know because they, maybe they're a hoarder or something like that. And they're embarrassed of what their neighbors might see. Or 5, they want the convenience, right? They don't want people coming through at all hours of the day. So if the agent can understand the objection handlers behind all of those, then they can, literally it becomes a tiger playing with hamsters, right? Like it's not fair anymore, right? Because they're going to say the same thing, and you can answer all of those objections before they even voice them. And boom, you're done. They want to work with you, and you're making money, they're making money, they're happy, and it's a win all the way around.
Mm-hmm. If they were happy before, they're going to be happy with your company. If they're unhappy before, they're not going to be unhappy. They're going to be unhappy with your company. So that makes a lot of sense, man. The 4 qualities, and it's kind of just like training the agent almost to have an investor perspective, it sounds like, and be able to handle have a certain script and be able to handle some or overcome some certain objections from the seller and stuff.
Right.
And I think
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. You just got to train that agent how to do it. And again, that's why they need to be humble enough to listen. But if the agent is humble enough to understand the scripts and the dialogues, man, fish in a barrel. It is like literally, it's people that raised their hand and said, I want to sell. And if you're able to solve it's the people that make the most money are the people that solve the most problems, right? It's like literally they say, this is my pain. And you walk in as a doctor and say, here's the prescription, boom, sign right here. And then you sell their house and make money, right? It's awesome.
Absolutely. So agents, for not to speak poorly on them, but I could say in general they have a little bit of a bad rap as far as working with wholesalers. How would you recommend, before you're even looking for the 4 qualities, like what's the best lead source for finding good agents to work with? Are you looking for an amount of transaction you've done, referrals, obviously? What's the best way for someone listening to this to even start looking in good areas to find investor friendly or wholesaler friendly agents?
Yeah. So, you can definitely go to RIAs. You can go to Facebook groups. You definitely want agents that have done more than 15 deals in the last 12 months. If not, then they're just not going to be skilled enough to think about a heart surgeon, right? If they're not at least doing 1 a month, then they're not your guy or girl, right? They need to be good there. And again, all of the things that I said when you're interviewing them, you're asking happy, hungry, humble, smart, looking for patterns. But Facebook groups, you can do that now. Here's the thing. You got to watch out. It's okay if they're doing some of their own investment groups, but if their main thing is investment, then, it may not be the right fit for you on that, because they should be able to be closing their own investor deals as well. And I literally have never heard of any agent that closes the kind of deals that we close, of investor deals that we close, like across the country. And I'm pretty tied in with the agent community, and I don't know of any of them across the country that does that. And so, if they're not able to do their own, it should make you at least question that. So I like the idea of somebody that their main focus is the retail side, but they also are very investor friendly and are willing to be that happy, hungry, humble, smart.
Very cool. And guys, just as you're listening, this kind of like midway through the interview, make sure to check out the link in the show notes, Chris Craddock, CRADDOCK.com, to check out everything REI Revive while you're listening to Chris go through this. I do want to hit on leadership and strategic relationship building, since I know you mentioned you have a doctorate in leadership, which is awesome. That's pretty rare to hear. Before we hop into that, to close off the interview though, Chris, I would love to hear kind of in general, you're doing a ton of stuff. What has been most successful for you this past year, just in your own real estate business?
Yeah, well, I've really worked hard to kind of level up into a place where I can work on the business and not in the business. One thing I didn't mention is I do have 11 businesses. So I've got a number of streams of income coming in. And so being able to work on business rather than in it has allowed me to alleviate myself from being the bottleneck that has been keeping my businesses from growing. So that's been probably the number one thing. I've got 5 books that I really studied like crazy to be able to really understand it at a new level. And that's one of the things that's really cool about our day and age. There's so much information out there. We can choose our profits, right? And so I picked a couple of people I really, really respect and like that I actually just heard on a podcast, reached out to them, and they've since become good buds of mine. And then I have a handful of books that I just literally dove into and devoured to really help me see how to kind of level up in my business ownership.
Awesome. What books are those outside of Extreme Ownership and The Road Less Stupid?
Yeah. So the books that I'd say, EOS Traction, I think is huge. 12-week year, a book called Scrum. There's a book called Clockwork, which is by the same guy that wrote Profit First, which is another book I think every business owner should.
Michael Malkowitz. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah. It's so good. The Clockwork is amazing. The E-Myth Revisited is one of my favorites. And then a book called Who Not How is also it. So 6 books in there. But those are the books that I just dove into. And if anybody ever wants to build out a business that's bigger than you, where you no longer have a job, but you have a business, and I'll tell you, if you were to go away for like 6 months and your business would fall apart, you still have a job. It's not a business. So if you ever want to do that, those books, if you just own them and devour them and just like really get into it, it's the fastest way to really build a business and get out of the job.
Love it. And I love the principle. It's something I'm trying to do myself. I've done it a lot, but trying to focus on a little bit more, I'll always be reading new books, but going back and trying to study one and go really, really deep into one and implement maybe for like a month at a time before jumping around too much other stuff. So those are all great book recommendations. I'll make sure that those are in the show notes as well. To cap this off, man, let's talk about leadership, have a doctorate in leadership, and then just also strategic relationship building, which I heard you give some really good insight that I liked listening to on other podcasts that you've done here recently. So leadership, man, how would you define leadership, and how have you grown as a leader over your career as 11 different streams of income coming in now and managing a bunch of people, and now you have coaching clients and everything?
Yeah. So leadership, John Maxwell says this, the best leadership.
Love John Maxwell. He's literally one of my favorite people. Not to cut you off there.
He's so good. Yeah. I mean, leadership is influence, and that's it. It's just influence. Can you create influence? Can you move people in the right direction? And And here's the deal. All sales, this was like eye-opening for me. All sales is leadership. So if you're a good salesperson, you can be a good leader. You just got to understand that that to get somebody to do the right thing, it's leadership and it's sales, right? You're selling them. You're helping them understand why this is best for them. And again, I'm bringing in all these different people that have influenced my life. Zig Ziglar says you can have everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want in life. And so that same idea is you need to set your business up where all of your goals are in alignment, right? Where you look around and all of the people can grow into a bigger and better version of themselves in your world and not outgrow you. And so that for me, if I want to be a good leader, I need to be sure that I'm growing like crazy. Otherwise, people are going to outgrow me. If they outgrow me, they're going to go into a different place. So literally every morning, part of my morning routine, I wake up, I think about the people in my world. I pray. I'm a Christian guy, so I pray for the people in my world. I think about how I can help them accomplish the goals that they have. And literally almost always, if I'm going to help them accomplish the goals that they have, it's not a zero-sum game where if they accomplish their goals, it takes less from me. It's they are bigger so that my world gets bigger and their world gets bigger as well. And I'll tell you, your business can only grow to the extent that you grow. So if you want their world to continue to grow and them not to outgrow you, you need to be focused on personal development yourself. I mean, for me personally, there's not a day that goes by where I don't spend at least an hour a day in personal development. And I'll tell you, you may not see it right away, but it's like when you look in the mirror, all of a sudden you look back 10 years and you don't even recognize, you're like, oh my gosh, I've changed so much. But like in the day to day, it's just these minor gradual changes. And it goes back to another book that I really love, The Compound Effect, where like it's these tiny little changes over time that like make this big influence. Or, you know, another book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I love how he defines it. He says, every day you're voting on who you want to become by your actions. And literally each action is a vote. And you don't have to win by unanimous vote. You just have to win by majority vote. So you have to do the right thing more often than you do the wrong thing to become more like the person you want to become.
Amazing, dude. All amazing book recommendations as well. And a lot of those are pretty stoic in a sense, where it breaks it down to, you know, if you want to have a great life, you need to put together great years and, you know, kind of just keep working your way down. So like Stoicism is one of my favorite just beliefs and almost religions in a sense, where it really comes down to just mastering your day. And I love how James Clear puts it, like anytime when you break it down like that, again, another mental framework, how you came from with the example you gave earlier in the interview with extreme ownership. Like when you read that, change your perspective, you went about keeping your team accountable a whole different way. When you read stuff like that, like Atomic Habits, you go about your way different, like, oh, do I want to have that ice cream at the end of the night? Oh, am I going to, you know, finish off these emails to 20 realtors I found earlier, or am I going to delay that to tomorrow? So yeah, mastering your days is huge.
And see, that's one of those things, like if you break it down to what they call the irreducible minimum, right? Like what is the thing that if you do this, you win your day? So one of the things I always preach and I always talk about is we look at our big goal at the end of the year, and then halfway through the year, we're like, oh man, we missed the goal. Or we get to the end of the year, we're like, man, we missed the goal. But the reality is, and this is what I love about the compound effect and Atomic Habits, is you can break it down to this irreducible minimum. What is that small thing? Or another book that I love, it's called The One Thing. What is this one thing? And the definition of the one thing is, if I do this one thing, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. And so
a quick camera flex real quick. That's the one poster I have. The one poster I have in my room is that one thing quote.
Yes, there we go.
Right there. Just to share that real quick.
Look at that. Like, bro, here's the funny thing is like all of these books, all these things that are life-changing to me are for you too. Like, it's funny. Success leaves clues, right? Like you see it, like the ones that like resonate because it's true on that. And so I don't know, the way I break it down with like the year is, if you want to win your year, you got to win your quarter, right? Like if you have 4 successful quarters, you will win your year. But if you want to win your quarter, you got to win the month. 12 successful months will win your year, right? Or 4 successful months will win your quarter, right? Or 3, whatever it is. not math right now. But then if you want to win your month, you got to win your week, right? 4 successful weeks wins your month. If you want to win your week, you got to win your day, right? 5 successful days on a normal week will end up winning your week, right? And if you want to win your day, you got to win your morning. And I believe this so solidly that if you set it up that by noon, whatever your goal is for the day, that if you accomplish that goal, that no matter what else happens the rest of the day, you have won your day, and you do that every single day before noon, that you will win your week, which will win your month, which will win your quarter, which will win your year.
Love that. I love playing with house money, and I'm the same way. Like if you get a lot of stuff done in the morning, it's like the rest of the day you're betting with house money. Like I can put some money down on red, and if I happen to lose it, I'll usually win. But if I happen to lose it, it's like, I already made a bunch of money earlier or knocked out, my most important things during the day. So that's absolutely right. 13 weeks before. Yeah, man. Love playing with house money. And guys, if you're able to monetize some of your dead leads, your retail leads that you're talking to, you have a lot more house money to play with in your business as well. Chris, this has been awesome stuff. Like great insights from someone that's doing a lot of volume, and genuinely like amazing coaches over at Wholesaling Inc. that have helped tons and tons of people that I've seen over the years. What would be, I guess I didn't really ask specifically about relationship building. I want to be mindful of the hard stop that we have coming up, but how would you say relationship building can be like applied for anybody listening? The strategic relationship building, obviously it's on the realtor side, finding them to help monetize dead lead or monetize retail leads. But how would you say just like general business building? You have 11 businesses, coaching, everything like that.
Yeah. So what I would say, a couple things. One, for one of the masterminds I'm in, they made me do my adult life map, and I realized that every jump that I had where I leveled up as a man, as a human, as a business owner, a dad, like all that always coincided with a new relationship that came into my life. So I'll tell you, relationships, in my opinion, are the biggest keys to leveling up. That's one. There's a book called Tribe of Millionaires that I thought was really, really good. I really liked it. That talks about that whole leveling up. Number 2, how do you build those relationships? One, I've got 11 businesses. I could never do those 11 businesses on my own. So I remember a mentor of mine said this: each business has to be its own folder with a face on it, and that face needs to not be yours, right? And so that's how that works. There is, you find people that are good at their area and let them succeed in their area. And then you also bring levels from your genius zone to help them do what they're doing well. Next, how do you find these people? I pay a lot of money to be in masterminds. I reach out to people. I'll tell you, whenever I hear people on podcasts where I like their vibe, like I would reach out to them. Like that's one of the things that I've done. And I try to make myself available to other people that reach out to me. I'm on at least a couple calls a week to people that have reached out to me because people were generous with me and helping me level up. And so that's one of the huge things. 2, how am I putting myself in places where the room is bigger and the people are more successful than where I have been? It's interesting because you get into a new room and then very quickly, like a fish, it only grows to the size of its tank. You will grow to be that same size, but then you're going to be, even though you grew there, you're going to be maxed out again. So you need to get into new rooms with bigger fish. But the crazy thing is, each time you level up, there's less of those rooms available to be into because, there's just fewer and fewer people each time. But if you go to people, you offer value to them. Here's one of the biggest things. Like if people call me and ask for advice, and I give them advice and then they call me back. Actually, I don't do tons of one-on-one coaching. I'm expensive. I don't really like it for most people because most people don't listen. But some of the one-on-one coaching I do is when people actually listen to my advice and call me and say, "Hey, Chris, I did what you told me to do. And now I'm, doing 3 times as many deals every month, then I'm like, okay, this is somebody I want to talk to, right? And the same thing is true. You find anybody out there that is doing more business than you, a lot more business than you, and you ask them for their advice, and then you actually do what they say, and you come back and say, hey, you changed my life because you told me to do this and I did it. And they're going to give you a lot more time because they know that they're not just throwing it out there, into an empty cavern, right? So you do what people say, and they're going to want to give you more time because they're going to see that you're somebody that really means business and that you're serious and that you're not just taking that education as a hobby, but you're actually taking it as a way to change your life.
Love it, man. What's the best place for people to reach out and follow you?
Yeah, so Instagram, old cheesy high school nickname, not my last name, but a cheesy high school nickname, Craddock, Craddrock. I've made it a commitment that I will respond to every direct message somebody sends me. May not be 24 hours, but I will respond to it. So yeah, if anybody has anything they want to reach out, feel free to do that at Craddock. I have a podcast myself. I know the average podcast listener listens to 7 podcasts, so keep listening to this one. And I'd love to be one of your other 7. My podcast is geared towards those that are real estate agents and investors. And so if that fits you, then yeah, please jump in on the podcast. And then obviously go to my website, chriscraddock.com. If you have any leads coming in, and either myself or somebody on our team will get on the call with you, check out your business, see if there's some ways we can monetize your leads that have been just sitting in your database and not having anything happen to them.
Awesome, man. I will have all of that in the show notes for you guys. Chris, this has been an awesome interview. Keep growing in leadership and influence, which John Maxwell would say is the same thing. And awesome to meet you, man. I'm hoping we can connect in a couple weeks in Tampa. That'd be cool to meet in person. Yeah,
it'd be fun. Speaking of masterminds with like some really good high level people. Yeah,
for sure, man. Well, enjoy this episode. Definitely check out everything in the show notes on Chris, the REI Revive, his podcast, especially if you're an agent and an investor. And have an amazing day, guys. Thank you.